And we're live.
This is Plant Daddy Podcast, serving you intersectional horticulture. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Steven.
All right, hello everybody. Hopefully your weekend is wrapping up nicely like ours, even though you're going to hear this after the weekend has already stopped. Steven, how was your Halloween?
It was good. It was very relaxed, as I think we discussed. Didn't actually end up going out this year. I feel kind of bad about that, but it also felt really good. I'm not gonna lie.
We spent the week doing so much stuff for the podcast that by the time Halloween came around, I was real happy to just have a quiet night to myself.
Actually, yeah, that was kind of a big part of it. We had a good, busy week of sort of networking and different, collaboration talks
Meeting a bunch
and
of really
stuff.
great people.
Yeah, it was really cool. But Halloween-wise, I guess I saw some costumes that were cool, but that's about it. How about
I
you?
saw somebody wearing a Totoro onesie on a scooter when I was at work, and I didn't remember that it was Halloween until I had already thought, what a weirdo. What is he doing?
Wow.
Why is he here? What is he?
Okay. So this is the worst Halloween podcast, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, it was a good weekend. Any plant news for you?
Oh, gosh. Well, I have been actively just going around preparing for winter.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're at the time of year where our nighttime temperatures are low enough that I've had to bring a lot of things indoors.
So what have you brought indoors?
I have brought in, the remaining tender plants that I don't think will make it if I just leave them out there permanently. I still have some zone 9 hardy plants that are out there. Those will only get brought in if the temperatures drop below 30 throughout the rest of the winter. But that took a lot of reshuffling inside. My parents actually came over for dinner last night, and the first thing that my mom said when she walked inside was, "Wow, there's a lot of plants in here."
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm like, yep, yeah, you knew that.
That's always been. Okay,
Yeah.
Mrs. Jackson, so, okay. Whatever.
Yeah, but she wasn't wrong. Miles came over to give me a couple more orchids that are really great, and when he was getting ready to leave, Brian was like, "There's no more room, you can't do this anymore."
Yeah, that's going to work. Good luck to Brian.
Well, this morning, Miles actually sent me photos of some Platycerium superbum that he found at a wholesaler, and he was like, "Do you want any?"
Oh, yeah, the answer's no. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I definitely told him no.
Nice.
Sorry, Brian. Okay, so, Stephen, today we are talking about group of...
Matthew, my plant updates.
Oh, I cared
Okay,
so much about our
yeah.
topic that I didn't care about you.
No. And then just this week, I'm finishing up my winter stuff, and I feel like I'm finally kind of looking at what I have again, right? Just because you're like, oh, get this in, spray it down, maybe repot it or whatever you're gonna do. I have some Pereschia that you gave me that has bounced back from basically being just desiccated, sort of fossilized, it looked terrible.
Yeah, it did.
And I just kept the leaves on, and the leaves have sprung back. It's really impressive, actually. And I have read that this is a weed some places, but I'm gonna try something where I grow it under highlight, put it in a little tiny pot, and kind of see what it does. Maybe with some of the other succulents, it kind of will turn into something kind of knobby and weird and interesting and architectural. And I'm kind of excited to see, because seems like such a fast grower, so it might turn into something cool.
Now, and for listeners who haven't heard some of the episodes where we talked about this plant, this is a really weird cactus. It's one of the kind of earliest to stop evolving cactuses where it still has legit leaves, and it's not thick and fleshy. It is definitely a succulent, but it grows from sort of a woody stem that has true spines but also leaves. And this particular species is one that has really, really beautiful kind of gold and bronze and pink new foliage, and it matures to darker green, but really striking plant.
Yeah, so I put this in a pot, and I have it teetering on the edge, my typical style a little bit, and we'll see how it grows in, and if it can turn into something cool, but I think it will.
I'm actually surprised it looks so good, to be honest.
Yeah,
Because
I am as well.
I like took the cuttings, set them out to callus over before they were potted, and it's actually surprisingly tender. So it like really shrunk up and wilted, and it gave Steven some dead looking sticks.
Very dead. I did throw some of them out, but I then was reading online. You can start it from the woody cuttings. So I kept the woody ones, and they're all taking, so they're great.
Yeah, cool.
So the topic at hand.
This is actually kind of an interesting one because Steven brought it up, and this is not a plant that I thought that Steven would want to like invest his time into.
Yeah, and you are largely right in the sense, right? I don't have these plants. I've seen them around for a while. I haven't been particularly interested in keeping them myself, but I think they are interesting for some reasons, right? And we can kind of get into that. I think they are beautiful. I think they're everywhere. So I thought it was something that's, worth learning about and kind of worth like flirting with on the podcast. Like I'm kind of approaching this like I don't know a ton about these. I know enough, I know about plants generally. So I'm like, okay, what are my guesses about these? How correct are they?
And you've done enough reading that you've heard a lot of things about them.
Yeah, I will say that I haven't looked into these specifically until we talked about doing this episode. I did so very kind of lightly. I didn't read a ton. And it's just what I'm going to like bring to this is just what I've seen at stores, what I assume, right? Yep. So I could be wildly off. I could be kind of right, I hope, but we'll see.
I'm interested to see what your expectations are for this because you're really coming in as just any general consumer looking at this family of plants. So we'll get back to that in a moment. But before that, I just want to remind everybody that we can be found on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest as Plant Daddy Podcast. And Steven has put a lot of work into getting our website, which is plantdaddypodcast.com, renovated. So it's in the process, it's in the works, but we're hoping to make that a really great resource that will be a fantastic place for you to go and take a look, get some stuff out of the episodes that we're hoping to make very accessible to you. Anything you want to add about that?
No, I think people can go there. They can see some more links to things that we talk about in these episodes. But yeah, just want to make something searchable, maybe some visuals if you're not sure what some of these plants are looking like and you're not very Instagram inclined. That's totally fine. So come to the website and check it out. It's kind of a basic experience, but hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah. And also, as always, we would love it if you could rate and subscribe. That is a really fantastic way to get other listeners able to find us. And anywhere that you listen to your podcast is a great place to do that.
Yep. So, so the topic at hand, I think of it this way. I'll set it up, actually. So these plants are all kind of, these are Maranta, and I want to say that's like a family, I'll say.
Yes, we're talking about the Marantaceae family.
Okay, and I think of this as Calathea and prayer plants. I kind of think of those as like, all right, these are subsets of this Maranta group. So it sounds like I'm right so far.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't have anything to correct you on.
All right, great. And so I've kind of seen these around for years. I've seen these at plant stores. You find these at the grocery store now.
Oh, yeah.
I've noticed them. I've noticed them at Matthew's house. And, at Matthew's house used at such a volume that I feel like, oh, he likes these. He's comfortable putting these in spaces that are not super well lit.
And, I mean, we talked about this in our Halloween special, but kind of the only potted plants that you really see regularly in the movie Little Shop of Horrors are in this family. Like, it's a really popular group that has been around for a while, and like prayer plants themselves, like my mom had one in a hanging basket when I was a very young child. She had a couple different forms of them, and those were some of the earliest potted plants that I really like had around in my life. They're pretty fantastic, and I think there's a lot of reason to support like why they're so popular.
Okay, and I think for me, I look at these like all right, this is a leafy tropical. To me, that's not necessarily my core interest, right? Like in plants. So these are leafy tropicals. I'm like, oh, these are not they don't look variegated, right? In the way that many other,
Well, maybe that's why I like them.
well, yes, which
Yeah. Because I now famously hate variegated plants.
yeah. Anyway, so it's not, and that's not even why I was saying that. Like I thought that kind of before.
No, but
that.
they have really beautiful
Crazy,
patterned
yeah.
leaves.
But I think in my mind, honestly, I was like, oh, is this some kind of irrigation? Is this some kind of selective breeding that would create these, right? And I'm like, oh, but they're so organic looking that I think I like that, and and I know a little bit more now, but. Yeah, that's kind of my thought about these. I guess I'll also add, I've seen some videos of prayer plants in particular kind of moving to chase light. And that's interesting to me too.
Yeah.
Like how they kind of move
Well, that's why they're
around.
called prayer plants, is that
And
their
I
leaves fold up at
Honestly,
night.
did not know that
Oh.
until I saw those videos, which was pretty recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right, that's kind of where I'm coming from to set this up, Matthew. But yeah, like, what do you have for me?
Well, I am going to, as always, take this back in time.
Okay.
This is a really fantastic group of plants because they are surprisingly useful in like a global economic sense. There are a lot of species and genuses that are very important. So the general ordering is that
So wait, can I interrupt you actually?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to offer a bit more here, I think that these, well, I pretty much know these are from the Americas.
yes,
They're from, like I want to say Central America and South America.
and the West Indies, etc.
And these are from jungly environments. These are undergrowth plants.
Yeah, these are all terrestrial. They tend to grow in those areas on forest floors where they have a good buildup of detritus. The humidity remains high. The light is medium to low. That's pretty much true across the board for all of these.
Okay, and I think that I brought that up because it plays a bit into the economics that I think you're going to say, or like maybe not the
Oh,
economics,
good
but
call.
some of the uses.
Yeah,
because they're kind of maybe regional in this a little bit, right?
Yeah, you're kind of reading my mind a bit.
Okay.
So the order that Marantaceae belongs is maybe one that you're familiar with. Do you know about the Zingiberales?
No.
I'm probably saying that wrong. Zingiberales. Zingiberales?
I don't know that one either.
All right. Well, this is the same one. This is the order that contains a lot of these really important plants. There are 68 genera with about like 2,600 species. And guess for me, based on what you know about Calathea and prayer plants, what are some of the like common produce items or spices that come from this family?
Okay, these are going to be wild guesses, and I'm going to sound more stupid than I have already in this particular episode.
Go for it.
I'm just looking at the leaf shape. I mean, like maybe, I don't know, maybe like a banana. I don't know.
That's actually one of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is more generous.
Keep going.
So you're saying fruits as well?
That's the fruit.
Okay, so now you're saying spices?
Yep.
Are there spices?
And think in terms
I don't
of
know.
seeds and roots.
I honestly don't. I don't know. Like, so it's gonna be tropical.
Yeah. Do you want me to stop torturing you?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually,
Thank you for bearing with me.
I'm pretty proud of myself. I got bananas. 'Cause I'm like, oh, it's
Yeah.
gonna be really lame, and it's like you just can't think of anything, so you say banana.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Well,
Perfect.
so Zingiberales, or however you say that, has 8 families within it. And these are kind of split out into the banana families and the ginger families.
Oh wow, I never would have thought ginger. Actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're closely related to gingers, cardamom, turmeric, bananas and plantain, of course, arrowroot, which is actually another name for the Maranta genus, is the arrowroots. Some of the other really important plants in this order include the canna lilies, birds of paradise, heliconia. Like, there's a lot of really beautiful flowering ornamentals in this group. But they're distributed throughout most of the pantropics. Like, this is a very widely spread group. They're actually something that has been identified in the fossil record as being 80 to 120 million years old. Centering in Australia, they kind of began in the early Cretaceous period. So they diversified by the end of the Cretaceous and spread all over the world into some subtropical, some temperate regions, but mostly tropical.
Okay.
So
wait, so right now you've zoomed out a little bit, right?
And I'm about to zoom back in.
Okay.
So Marantaceae, which is one of the ginger groups, not the banana groups, that is closest related to the cannas, which are a colorful, kind of subtropical looking flower. They're grown ornamentally. You're familiar with them if you live in the South because they're fantastic, like outdoor container or bedding plants.
Okay.
But the funny thing is that Marantaceae kind of originated in Africa. They've been able to determine that with genetic testing and looking at history, blah, blah, blah. But today, most of the 29 genera and almost 600 species live in the Americas. And there are about 7 genera in Africa, 6 in Asia, and none present in Australia, which is where their whole order originated. So it's interesting to see how they've kind of spread out. And particularly Marantaceae is considered to be one of the most derived families in this group because they have an extreme reduction in stamen and carpels within their flowers. So these are kind of one of the unique members of this larger group because they have evolved out of some of the more typical characteristics.
Wait, they don't have flowers?
No, they do have flowers, but the flowers have evolved further and lost a lot of the features that are really typical in most of this group.
Okay.
So tell me how you think they're probably cared for in the home based on this.
I would put these in lower light areas or, not in direct sun or something. I would put this in like a richer soil and I would keep these on the wetter side. I would, have humidity if I could. I don't, so I don't think of that. But like, that's what I would do.
Yeah, you're actually not that far off.
Okay.
They don't like to stay wet. This is a plant that prefers constant moisture, but because they grow kind of in that like loamy detritus that builds up on a forest floor, they like their mix to be pretty airy. It should never dry completely. They'll kind of suffer if they dry a lot, but they do have a starchy rhizome, like a tuber underground, that does get them through periods of drought. What's more critical to them is the humidity, because this is something that they constantly have even during dry seasons where it's not raining as heavily. So everything else is right. If you give them really bright direct sun, the beautiful coloring of their leaves fades and the leaves will actually burn pretty easily in direct sun. So think low to medium light. You'll get the best growth with the most light as long as it's not direct sun. It's kind of one of those games.
Okay.
Because they're also from the forest floor, this is an area that is pretty consistent in temperature. Like, it doesn't fluctuate the way that orchids or bromeliads growing up in a canopy would.
Yeah.
So you don't want it to get very cold. They're going to start to suffer below like 55, 50 degrees or so. It's best to keep them happy, humid, consistently warm, but it is a plant that enjoys basic living room conditions as long as your living room has a humidity that's like over 50 to 60%.
Okay, and is this a standard growing rate, whatever that means? Like, not a fast grower, but not an extremely slow grower?
It kind of depends on the age of the plant and also the time of year. Most of these can grow to be quite large over time, and this can kind of go in a couple of ways. Like, a prayer plant is a relatively small scale plant, but it'll grow bushy and it'll start to drape. That can take a while for it to do, but once it's kind of reached the point where that's as much as the plant wants to kind of commit to its own resources, its growth will slow down and it won't get much larger. a lot of the Calathea can grow up to 3 feet tall. Like, they can become quite large. But if you grow them indoors, you can buy them in a little 4-inch pot and keep them in a 4-inch pot for quite a while and only uppot them occasionally as they get root bound, and they'll stay fairly small. But the nice thing about them is that they look like the same plant in a 4-inch pot as they do a 10-inch one. So it's just a change in the scale. And you'll see some Calathea that are kind of best displayed when they're allowed to get full size. You'll also see some that are just fine kept on the more small, younger side. But once they reach their maximum, they're going to slow down a lot, and they're not going to really do much beyond maintaining their foliage.
Okay, and so in my mind, prayer plants and Calathea, when I hear those, I kind of think different things. Like, I think different kinds of plants, different features a little bit.
Well, do you want me to let you know kind of what that comes from?
Yeah, or I'm asking, like, you don't, I mean, in a shop or in a home kind of setting, I'm not lumping those together as the same thing that you're looking for when you're buying a plant.
Okay, so I am kind of doing that because a lot of time these are all referred to as prayer plants.
Oh.
They are not the same genus.
Okay.
Marantaceae is like the arrowroot family, and they're called this because of their starchy, fibrous rhizomes. They're also sometimes called the prayer plant family. And
So wait, Calathea is called prayer plant as well?
well,
Because I wouldn't think that. Like, I don't know
Marantaceae is called the prayer plant family, but the
Oh.
true prayer plant is Maranta,
Okay.
which is a genus.
Yeah.
So, because in this same family, we also have Calathea, they are sometimes called prayer plants, even though they are not the prayer plant in a different genus, Maranta versus Calathea. So, like, yeah, this
That did not clear it up.
this
You know
is
what I mean? All right. So it's a messy stew, right?
Yeah, this is
There-
one of those things that people use imprecise terms constantly.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to know. Maranta is one group, and by group I mean genus, and it has 3 important species within it, basically. The one that you're going to come in contact with is Maranta, excuse me on this name, leuconura.
Okay.
And so Maranta leuconura has many different versions of it that have different patterns, colors,
Oh,
textures
okay.
of the leaves. That is
All
the
right.
prayer plant.
I kind of assumed that those were different species. Okay.
No, and you know, actually, I had that same feeling for a while because to me, there are 2 main forms that have different color variation within them. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but it's all the same species. It's just a really diverse looking one. But I also want to kind of put your attention to one that I've never seen myself, and I've only learned about it when I was preparing for this episode. But Maranta, again, sorry for this name, Arundinacea, Maranta arundinacea, was one of the very first kind of domesticated plants in prehistoric South America. And it looks quite a lot like any of the other members of this family, where it has a long, stiff petiole with a flat leaf blade, kind of patterned, but it's mostly green. And it was grown for the fibrous root has a starch that if you pound and boil and soak it in water and stuff, you can extract that. And so that was an important food source for the people living in the Amazon rainforest. And it actually basically goes from like Mexico into the West Indies and South America down like to Venezuela. But it's widely cultivated in larger areas, and it was probably domesticated sometime around like 820 to 560 BCE. So,
Okay, so as a food plant.
yeah, and along with squash and the bottle gourd, like these are some of the most important plants for the prehistoric people of this region in time.
Do you know, are there any that are still eaten?
Um,
Like in this genus or?
Well, arrowroot in general is still used. Like even today, it's grown because it produces a flower that has, you know, some amount of nutritional value, but it is an easily digestible starch that is pretty easily grown. I've never used it or seen it, but it is cultivated outdoors in tropical climates or subtemperate climates.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that is one of the species in the Maranta family. But the one that within the Maranta genus that we all like and love is, of course, the prayer plant. So there are lots of different varieties of this. The two different main groups that I want to draw your attention to, there are some that seem to have a slightly thicker leaf texture and more smaller blotches and lines that run along the veins. These lines may be red, they may be dark green.
There's pinks and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
like there's a lot of different colors. They're very ornate. The second one is a little bit softer in texture, perhaps, and they have a little bit larger blotches, but they don't have that strong striping between them. So those are kind of the two that I separate out in my mind. But basically, they have a black one, they have like an all green one, they have one with red. There are different shades of the one that doesn't have the stripes. So some of the ones to look for are going to be the red prayer plant. There's a variety called Kim that has a little bit of variegation on top of the blotches, but they don't have those leaf stripes. Mm-hmm. There's also the green prayer plant, which doesn't have the stripes, but it does have kind of a dark purple blotch. My favorite one is like the lemon lime one. I think it's also called...
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, Maricela. These are my favorite just because it's a variety of green shades that stand out really nicely against each other. I have two of them that... Actually, I have three of them, and they're all growing in areas where they receive either some direct light in the morning or no direct light all day long, but it's still fairly bright. Mm-hmm. And I just let them get long, and they kind of trail, and every now and then where they're long enough, I just prune them back and then root the cuttings. Mm-hmm. But this is a very dependable houseplant. This is what my mom grew, and like they're fantastic. If the plant gets too long, you can literally cut it back to the soil, give it a little dry period, and then when you start watering it again, it'll spring back from the tubers.
Okay.
Yeah. They're fantastic.
So the two that you just mentioned, you said like groups. Are those two species?
No, this is the same species. Okay. Like this is not a group that a taxonomist would talk about. This is just like a visual assessment for me. Whether or not it has those long stripes that go from the mid vein out to the outside. I think that's the primary difference between like a huge variety of colors.
Okay, and I'm kind of, like I'm a carnivorous plant person. I'm always like wondering about some extra thing the plant does or something, right? So do you see the motion ever? I mean, you probably wouldn't with your naked eye, right? But do you notice the leaves being in a different position later?
Yeah,
okay.
Like there's one that's on the open shelving in my dining room. And the leaves move around so much during the day that sometimes you walk past the plants and all you see are the back sides. Sometimes you walk past and all you see are the front sides. Other times it's kind of all over the board. I have a desk lamp set up there that just kind of shines light 24 hours a day.
Okay.
And this plant has kind of grown into that light a bit, and it definitely like moves around. And so it's very striking to be able to see like the different way that the plant has turned itself. Now, I also noticed this in my Calatheas, and I only have the one variety of this one species of Maranta, but I have a lot more Calatheas. So tell me what you think really makes the Calathea different from the Maranta.
To me, there's a leaf shape difference that something I would call Calathea is usually longer and less like paddle-shaped leaves. And from Calathea, I would not expect the motion. I wouldn't expect like the prayer plant leaf pattern, which I feel like is kind of distinct and like feathery somehow. And yeah, Calathea, I would expect more, not variegation exactly, but sort of closer to like greens and patterns that are more sort of...
Are you thinking that they'll be less ornate overall?
No, less ornate's not the right word. I guess for Calathea, I'm thinking it's going to be a longer leaf. I'm thinking it's going to be more greens and less swirly sometimes.
Okay.
I'm thinking like the Mosaica and how kind of geometric that looks. And I guess I mean grid-like, something like that. Anyway.
So, dear listeners, this is... For any of us who love this family of plants, this just clearly shows that Stephen is not very familiar with Calathea.
God, I feel like I'm so right. Okay.
Well, you're not wrong, but also there is a lot of diversity in Calathea. Some of them have very long, narrow leaves, like you're describing, like the rattlesnake plant, which is Calathea lancifolia. It has leaves that are purple on the backside. They're long and narrow, but they're also sort of like rippled along the margins, and they have light green
I think I know what you're
leaves with
talking
dark
about.
green blotches.
I kind of like that one.
Yeah, that one's really pretty. But there are some of them, like Calathea macquayana, where it's the same kind of color palette, but it's a large round leaf of light green with dark green.
Oh, really?
There are like so many different varieties of it. You have a lot of these called peacock plants. And while they do often have kind of shades of green as their primary patterning, you'll often have red, burgundy, pink backsides. You'll often have some pink, burgundy, white, cream on the front side. And a lot of them have like just a fantastic, they look painted because of the way that the veining and stripes go. One of the hybrids that I like a lot is Misto, because it has these light colored veins that kind of run out from the midleaf, but they kind of variably fade before they get to the edge. So they look very painted.
Actually, yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. One of the really popular ones right now is Calathea orbifolia, which has very large round leaves, and they're just shades of light green and dark green. But pinstripe is one of my favorites. It has dark green leaves with pinstripes of like pink and cream. It's a really nice plant. These are very striking, and these to me satisfy a lot of the desire that I have for some diversity of form, color, texture without wanting to go heavily into white variegated plants, because they give all of the color and texture that I want without it being that particular aspect.
And not that this is the point of this show so much, but to me it seems
What is the point of this show?
great question. I mean, to me it seems like these patterns are more regular, right? Where variegation is more kind of irregular, and maybe that's kind of the difference
Now,
in your mind on some level.
I am getting us prepared to do an episode about leaf patterning, whether that's like a patterned leaf that comes that way, that is the same on every leaf that the plant grows because that's what it's genetically inclined to do, that's how it's evolved, versus the mutations that go into variegation, the different kinds of variegation, the different ways that a plant might have that, which of course is going to be different from leaf to leaf and plant to plant. So we're going to talk more about this in the future. I'm really fascinated in this topic, but you're right, like with these plants, this is just how they've evolved to have this patterning and this coloring.
Yeah, so I'm cheating and I Google image searched Calathea. There's a lot more included in here than I assumed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more paddle-shaped leaves, I would say, or just rounder leaves.
Some of my favorites, like I mentioned, I really like the peacock Calathea, which is the macquayana. I like well, we're going to talk more about this plant later, but Calathea mosaica is one of my favorites. I like Misto. Freddy is pretty. Medallion is nice if you like darker leaves with more purple. Corona has silvery kind of pale seafoam green with red and purple. Beauty Star is a great one because it has lime green and dark green. Like, if you don't know much about Calathea, just go Google it and you'll find some that you like. I'm almost sure.
So where would you start if you were new to these plants?
Well, in the Marantaceae family, I think that I would start you off with just the Maranta that everybody knows and loves, the prayer plant.
Okay.
You have a bunch of varieties that have slightly different colors, but they're all going to be dependable. They're all going to be easy. The one thing that I'm going to recommend specifically is that it's really critical to make sure that they get enough light. People tell you that they're low light plants, but I have this spot that is like feet from an east facing window that is blocked by lots of hanging plants. It's next to my television. It's like 6 feet under some hanging grow lights that everything else in that area enjoys. I killed 2 prayer plants by putting them there. They'd look great for a while, and then slowly the leaves would yellow, and there was nothing I could do to resuscitate them. Perhaps this was overwatering, but if it was overwatering, it was just because the plant was trying to go dormant because there wasn't enough light. Like, I'm not sure. I was really weirded out because they're supposed to be so easy. And I thought, oh, this is a great place for an easy plant that's very beautiful. And then I killed 2 of them in quick order. So the third one that I got, I put in a spot that I didn't think was much brighter, but it was closer to an east-facing sliding glass door that doesn't get any direct light in that area. It's actually right next to where I grow my satin pothos that I talked about in an earlier episode. And it has done so well. Like, I just water it occasionally. Sometimes it gets really droopy, and then I water it. Occasionally, if I let it get too dry, it'll start to abort some of its older leaves and they'll yellow and curl up. But you just keep it fairly damp at all times, letting it dry occasionally. And it is really dependable. It's beautiful, it's thick, it's lush, it's very happy. And this is a plant that I don't have to really do much or worry much about, and it yields really great results. So I think that for the first time person who's interested in the Marantaceae family, start with one of these just to build your confidence.
Okay. Is, like, if you're just not into the prayer plant look or shape or something, is there a Calathea that where you would start?
Well, I mean, we can go there, but what I would tell you is if you don't think that you like the prayer plant because you're used to the red prayer plant, just look at the other ones.
Okay.
Like, there are 4 or 5 easy to find varieties of it. There's also some that are a little bit harder to find. I think, though, one of those is probably going to do it for you. Like, I don't like the red one. So I never had a red prayer plant for years, but I really like the one that I think is called, like, lemon lime, where it has all the stripes, all the blotches, but it's just shades of green. And that, to me, is really beautiful. So look at the other available ones if you don't think that you like the ones that you're familiar with.
Okay.
But to answer the question that you just asked about the prayer plants or about the Calathea, they're all the same. Like,
really?
They're all basically the same in their requirements.
Okay.
With a little bit of exception. So I have read some various, like, testimonies from people online saying that these are great, these are hard. I think it varies a lot for individual growers based on their conditions. Something that really caught my attention in the Calathea family, I had grown a few of them, I had enjoyed them, but when I saw Calathea mosaica, it really caught my eye because it's less ornate, it's less decorative. I think that there's a lot about it that is not nearly as just generally appealing to this plant compared with the other ones that are much flashier. But it has this spectacular, like, lime green colored leaf with a dark green, really geometric netting and veining across it.
Yeah, see, I was struggling to what to call that. You call that, you would say veining? That doesn't even seem right to me. It's like such a it's like
I would call it netting.
Kind of netting,
like, it totally looks like just dark green fishnet tights with a regular weave over a lime green leg.
Right.
No, but this is a plant that when I was first reading about it, a lot of people were saying this is the easiest Calathea I have ever had. And then a fair number of other people were like, I don't know why anyone says it's easy. It's trickier than all the other Calathea I grow. So that was one of those plants that I was like, well, let's see what my luck is. And so I ordered a beautiful one off Etsy. And it was actually a huge plant, really well priced. I was super happy with it. I had a beautiful pot that I had, like, already determined I was going to use for it. And I found a slip pot that was, like, just the right size to put inside. And this is one of those kind of translucent plastic nursery pots that has, like, very thin slits cut in the side.
Yeah, I have some here.
And I got this one particular because I was really, really worried that I would, like, rot the plant. So I used a very light, porous, airy, very rich soil. There's, like, a lot of organic matter. There's a good amount of perlite. There's a fair amount of just sphagnum moss and stuff.
Wow.
And I potted the plant. It had a really healthy root system, and it was growing in several new leaves when I took it out of the packaging. And I was worried that maybe just the shock and trauma that it would abort those new leaves. Because if it was an aroid, it probably would have. Like if, like my Anthurium clarinervium that aborted all of its new foliage when I brought it home. I was expecting the Calathea to do the same. It didn't. They grew in, they matured, they looked great. So because it's a translucent pot inside of a larger ceramic cache pot, I've been able to really monitor.
You can kind of see the root growth or something.
They're doing real well. Like, I'm able to see the roots. It's actually growing some roots out of the cracks or like the slits in the pot. It's growing them out, and they're starting to grow secondary roots. And I right now have 7 new leaves coming up. And what's really interesting about this is that the other Calathea that I have kind of have, it's like a clump from a central growth point. The Calathea mosaica seems to have all of its stuff underground. So it's just like leaves poking up.
Oh.
And they're all kind of like centered around, you know, obviously where the plant is centered underground. But all of the new growth, it started with just these like bright pale green, like little bits that would like poke out of the soil. And then they would slowly unfurl, kind of look a bit like a calla lily, and then the leaves themselves are now coming up through it. And I'm like gesturing with my hands what this looks like to Steven, as though you two can see.
Suggestive and strange, but I get it.
Yeah. And so there are going to be 7 new leaves on this plant, and it already has quite a number of leaves. I'm just beyond thrilled with how happy it is.
Okay.
And I just have it on my dining room table, which listeners will know is not a very highlight spot.
No, but you have some grow lights there.
Yeah, I've got like
just
3 14-watt LED bulbs hanging above.
Kind of far from the plant, but it's like there is light that reaches it.
It's actually close enough to them, like it's within a foot of the leaves.
Okay.
So, yeah, that has been a fantastic one, and I think it's really beautiful. It's not very available right now. You're not just going to walk into a shop and find it unless you're a really fucking lucky bitch. Like, like I really, like I'm very jealous of you if you can just go buy this plant at a market, because I had to send away for it and pay $20 in shipping. No, but actually, best of luck to you if you find it by 3. But I think that other ones, I could just basically say find a leaf pattern that you like, because as far as I can tell, and as far as online says, they're all basically the same in their care requirements, which, like we already said, bright light, constant moisture, don't like to dry much, don't like to stay wet, like it warm, like it humid. If you can provide that, just find one that is both the size, shape, and color that you like. You can pick long, narrow leaves like the rattlesnake plant. You can have round ones like the round leaf Calathea. You can have very colorful ones like the peacock, medallion, dotty, corona, eclipse. You can do a lot of things with these plants. Okay. So it's all about finding the one that speaks to you.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a big, diverse kind of group.
Yeah.
Right? Just there's lots of visuals to choose from.
But I do think that generally you can break it down. There are Calathea with very large, very round leaves. There are Calathea with more kind of like typical leaf shape. And then you have ones that are very, very narrow. I think that like those are the 3 general forms of this plant. They can all get fairly large, but they'll kind of grow to the size of the pot that you have.
Okay, so for these, you would never really grow these for the flower. Would they ever flower in the home? Because I was looking online, and some of the flowers are kind of weird and interesting.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the blooms of this whole group is that they're not nearly as colorful or special as like the spiral gingers or the true gingers or the heliconia, like the other members of the order that these plants come in. But I'm actually not sure if this is still considered a Calathea, but there is what used to be called Calathea crocata, which is known as like the flowering Calathea. And it has tall spikes with these ridiculous like flame-looking flowers. Like, to me, they kind of look like blown glass flames. And
Yeah, I'm looking it up online. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It looks like a prop.
And I kind of think that they've actually been moved into a different genus entirely. Like, it might be more correct to call them Geoperdia. But this is a flowering calathea. The way that the flowers in these are all kind of designed is pretty interesting. The flowers are large and showy in a lot of them, like I said, but they have colorful petal-like structures that are very typical of gingers. So you can look at some of the other ones in this family just by Googling like calathea flower, and they all kind of just look like these colorful bracts. They might be yellow, they might be white, they might be pink, and this is something that definitely adds some bonus feature, but you're really going to have to keep their light pretty high, the temperature's pretty warm, the humidity ideal before you're going to see this indoors.
So that's just not...
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Like, it's nice, but don't expect it. If you have a greenhouse or a conservatory, you probably should expect it and hope for it. But by and large, they are not a floral attraction.
So am I correct if I summarize it this way? Like, you have, for a jungly kind of plant, a low light place, lower light place, the easiest option would be some kind of pothos or maybe a philodendron.
Yeah.
But this is not too far away as far as needs goes. It's like, okay, you could get one of these for this spot as well. You should just pay a bit more attention to water, give it a bit more humidity, just pay more attention. Is that true? Or?
Yeah, and in fact, you just reminded me in our indestructible plant episodes, I think that I classified Calathea and prayer plants as recommended as long as you were willing to put in a little bit extra work for a very easy, reliable houseplant.
Okay.
Now, some of the problems that you're going to encounter are spider mites. Like, that's the problem that you encounter with both of these.
They just love these plants? Or
Yeah, these plants really do want good humidity, good light. They don't like to dry out. If they stay too wet, their roots will begin to rot. So there are enough little challenges that are very easy to overcome on their own, but together you can easily have a stressed calathea in your home. And the way that the calathea responds to stress is by becoming susceptible to pests. And you won't always notice that you have problems like scale insect or mealybugs, because those will grow like in tight, crowded areas near the growing points of the plant, which are usually hidden by leaves. So you're gonna have to like be poking around to find them before they become like an actual infestation. And same with the spider mites. You're going to have quite a few of them before you start noticing like that spotting disfigurement on the leaves themselves. And it's not going to kill the plant outright, but it will continue adding stress. And I have had mealybug on one of my calathea. I have had spider mites on several of them. So the best way to just head that off is to make sure that you're checking your plants regularly, keeping an eye on those cultural parameters. They're important, because the less stressed your plant is, the better off it's going to be at avoiding having pests like this.
Yeah.
And if you have a plant that has been infected in the past, you have to keep a good eye on it, because it's very likely that that can flare back up if you're not diligent.
So is this, these don't seem particularly sensitive, right? So this, I would be like, oh, try some neem oil at first. If that doesn't work, you can try kind of a standard systemic. Is there anything to be aware of?
That's ideal. In fact, I think that you might even get away with, when you water them as a preventative measure. I have just started taking mine into either like the sink or the shower and just spraying them down lightly, because if there is the start of anything, if it hasn't taken hold yet, if I'm just watering with a heavy stream of water knocking around the foliage, that'll usually take care of spider mites or something like that. If I notice anything like disfigured foliage, then I'll go ahead and use either a systemic or a neem oil. But again, if you're going to use systemics, make sure that you read and follow the instructions, because those can be really toxic to pets, children, yourself. It's good to just make sure that you're thoughtful about that use. Neem oil is fine, but I don't really find that it's terribly effective unless you're really diligent about using it. Okay. So kind of find the solution that works for you. Dry air is going to be the biggest thing that'll bum these plants out. So as we head into winter, that's going to be the one thing to keep an eye on, is making sure that your indoor heating isn't creating dry conditions that'll invite pests and really like mess up your calathea.
So you and I are big kind of soil amenders, right? We'll make our own, soil for our conditions. If you were to take a standard potting soil, you're not going to run into issues. Are you?
No, I think that like typical, like good quality potting soil is generally designed for exactly the kind of conditions that these plants want.
Okay.
Like if you want to go about amending it, I would recommend enriching it with either like slow release fertilizer or like some compost. And if you add compost, also throw in some more perlite, maybe a little bit of sand. I like the added moisture retention and airiness that chopped sphagnum moss adds. So like there's a lot of things that you could do to get more of a light, moisture retentive, well draining mix, but you're not gonna have to do this for the health and benefit of your plant. This is something that I do for like my own personal joy, because I feel like a mad scientist chemist who's doing everything I can to keep my plants happy.
I'm with you.
So,
I feel like we're not alone. So,
if you like being really fussy, here's a plant for you.
Whoever is listening this late into the episode, they're probably with us.
Yeah. They all zoned out when I was talking about turmeric.
They what?
If they didn't care, they zoned out when I was talking about turmeric.
Oh, yeah. That's a while ago.
Yeah. But this is really just a fantastic group of plants.
Yeah, I'll say as your friend, I feel like this is one of the groups that you're passionate about.
And this is pretty new for me, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. Like, a lot of my plant collecting has not been around this whole group. But the more that I become immersed in them, the more that I see them on Instagram and Pinterest, the more that I see them in other people's homes and in garden centers, I have really come around to them. And like, I mean, we already got some hate mail about how I hate those variegated plants, but I think that this is a really great plant that offers really beautiful color and patterning that isn't expected. Like, it's not the way that you necessarily think when you think
it seems very unique from species to species to
and they
me,
look
or even
so
within
artistically done. Like, it's just a plant that looks like a designer made it.
Okay. I think that's all as far as my sort of questions. I feel like, all right, if I feel like I want to venture out and kind of do this, I would know where to start. It really does seem like these are truly available almost anywhere, right? I mean, if we're at the grocery store sort of level, at least here in the Northwest where we are. Now, so easy to get.
One thing that I am going to say, though, I don't mean to be shady against grocery store plants or big box plants, but really check the quality of the calathea that you're buying.
So that would be like, make sure it looks healthy, make sure it's not infested, make sure what?
All of that. Yeah. Like, take a look, see if the soil is not sopping wet, but also not bone dry. It should be the right moisture level, or else you might bring home a plant with a bad root system that either has rot or desiccation that it'll have trouble bouncing back from. It'll also be more likely to get pests if it's really stressed. So don't just buy a plant thinking, I'll nurse this back to health. Just do yourself a favor and just start with a healthy plant. The spider mite situation in nurseries can be out of control. It's just impossible to consistently always produce plants for wholesale that are going to be completely pest-free. And since these can be magnets for them, I think that you should really check between the leaves, look for little signs that there might be something sucking sap or causing that spotting, that really fine spotting that's typical of a mite infestation. Those are things to stay away from, because unfortunately you don't want to be bringing home a plant that is already susceptible to these things, is already stressed in shipment, has these as a sign of that stress. You bring it home, it has more stress with transferring to your home environment.
Yeah.
And then you brought them into your home for your other plants to get. So not only is your calathea likely to not succeed, but you might have just like thrown off your whole like jungle or home ecosystem with a new terrible little pest to deal with.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else? I mean, that you want to say about these?
Well, I do make it sound really doom and gloom about those pests, but the only reason that I'm like laying that on so thick is these are really pretty easy plants. I think that these plants have a bum reputation because everyone just kind of assumes that their demands for humidity or their past non-successes with them are an indication this is a challenging houseplant. I think that they can be challenging if you want something that you don't have to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, we have a whole episode dedicated to the other plants that we would recommend for you other than Calathea. But if you like keeping close eyes on your things that are growing and thriving in your home, this is a really fantastic and rewarding one. I think that the patterns and colors that they offer more than make up for the fact that these are not flowering plants that like offer that as a benefit. Your prayer plant will pretty often bloom, but there's small purple or white flowers. Like, there's a lot that this plant does with just its leaves.
Yeah, and I will say too, as someone who doesn't have them, I think they are striking when I see them. So yeah, they're definitely interesting statement plants.
Yeah, and I think that the last thought that I want to leave our listeners with, there are several other genera that are pretty common to encounter in this family. The rules apply to these too. Like, one of them is Stromanthe. It's the same general idea. It's a little taller. It grows like long petioles and stalks that create more of a like upright look than the prayer plant or the Calatheas. And then there's another one that looks very similar, whose name, Citinanthe. But anyway, these offer like a lot of the same attributes, a lot of the same cultural needs. They're like the same general idea, but you're going to come across these as well. And don't turn your nose up at them because you think that they might be tricky. They're just like Calathea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. I feel like I would have enough information to get started. Hopefully everyone listening does as well.
What do you feel like you're going to start out with?
Oh, I didn't say I would.
I am trying to get a commitment on air for you.
So this plant for me, maybe if there were a variety that was not very large, that had a pattern that I really loved, I think I'd be interested in doing that, or trying those out. I did really like your Calathea musaica. I was kind of shocked how much I like that in person.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's a really interesting leaf. But with prayer plants, I don't feel particularly compelled yet. Maybe if there's a spot that I just want to fill with a plant kind of thing, I would do that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like, you talked about that comparison, right? Like, there's roids and sucks, which, for anyone who hasn't heard that. Yeah.
Roiders and suckers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, aroid people or succulent people. I mean, not that this is an aroid, but it's kind of aroid-esque.
I mean,
compared
it's a
to
leafy
succulent.
tropical.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I just think I'll probably find some succulents instead. But
I tried.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, you tried. If I get bitten by the bug, I feel like I would know. What to do now.
I'll hook you up.
Oh yeah, I know you will.
I'm pretty sure that my Calathea musaica needs to be repotted probably pretty soon because of how quickly it's growing.
Oh, I might. Yeah. I might take some of that. I mean, I guess you could sell it for like $100 a.
This is a plant that is so beautiful and precious to me that will be a precious little cutting that I will hand to you with a sour look on my face because I don't want you to have it, but I also do.
Oh, yeah. Listen, and for me that I'll be totally okay if you don't want to give it to me.
Well, it took forever for you to get the Rhiphidophora tetrasperma from me, so in a year and a half, you can have some Calathea musaica.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. That's perfect for me, too.
So, and I do want to know, there's one interesting cultivar of this particular species. It's called Network. And you'll see people referring to Calathea musaica and Network Calathea as the same thing. They are the same species, but Network is a specific, special plant that I think it's Costa's farm has patented. And it has a bolder kind of contrast between the background leaf color and the netting on it.
Is that the one that you have?
No, I think I just have the straight species. So if you think that these are the same, they're not. And if you want one with really strong patterning, you need to look for the Costa Farm exclusive network. Otherwise, if you buy from any other source, it's just the straight species, and it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but some people might care about that.
So yeah, Matthew, maybe I'll just wait till you have the better one.
I didn't say it was better. I just said it was different.
So, okay, this is like kind of a hot one. Is there any other like super trendy, cool thing that we just, that is like just new to Instagram kind of, that's like another it? I mean, to me, it just is this one kind of.
The one that I feel
you're more plugged in.
The two that I think are like really popular right now are, of course, the
Musaica.
Yeah, Musaica, and that one is kind of all of them. But it's the Calathea orbifolia with the giant round leaves that I think people are really responding to right now. Those are kind of the two that I see the most buzz about. I feel like the rattlesnake one that we've already mentioned, the lancifolia, that one's also pretty popular. And those two have kind of an extreme of leaf shapes with big and round versus long and narrow.
Okay.
So those are the extremes that people are enjoying these days, but literally they're all popular.
All right, awesome.
Misto's my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
I think that's about it.
I feel like we've tried to wrap this episode several times, but we just keep having interesting things to say about these beautiful plants.
Oh, yeah. No, I think there's a lot to these. They're just more species and variety than I thought, actually, when I sort of proposed this and proposed the whole, like, how about I just come in and I'll kind of ask questions and just be like, the new consumer to this, group. Anyway. But I think I learned a lot. I expected some of these things, but
what was your favorite fact that you learned today?
I think just the variety of Calathea, honestly. Yeah. Like, I really thought Calathea was kind of a one sort of leaf shape. So
it's like 3.
It's upwards of 3.
Yeah. My favorite fact that I learned was how closely related they are to so many other things. That blew my mind. That like the bananas, the gingers, the heliconia, the cannas, like these are all in the same order. And since I just bought a humongous orange bird of paradise from the Indoor Sun Shop, it should be blooming soon. I'm really excited. Now I feel like I have Zingiberales, Zingiberales, whatever, like whatever this order is. Like
I'm also in this episode, and I wasn't so sure what you were saying at first, but I got it now. Yes,
Zingiberales. I've now like unintentionally started a collection of this order. Okay, so that's a problem for Brian.
Listen, I'm sure this has happened to Matthew before.
Well, he is on board.
Accidentally starting collections.
Yeah, it happens every time that I develop like 3 things that have some attribute. And now I'm like, well, now I have to have them all.
So, yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it before he starts collecting something else. This has been Plant Daddy Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you enjoy what you've heard, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. If you want to be in touch, you can always email us at plantdaddypodcast@gmail.com or check out our social media, on which we can be found at Plant Daddy Podcast. We're looking forward to you tuning in next time, so thank you for listening and happy growing.
Thanks a lot.